Number one, that no disciplinary action be taken against any student or teacher that has taken part in this movement.
The school district expelled about 175 of the students after they staged a walkout.
I was a person that I would stand up for myself, I would defend myself. I walked out because I believe in what we were standing for.
In my opinion, they have always been pushing us, and I think it's time for us not to be pushed around so much.
It was in the DNA of that community to separate people. Social institutions, economic institutions, educational institutions would then follow suit.
Number 8, that as Chicano students, we be allowed to speak our mother tongue Spanish on school premises without being subjected to humiliating or unjust penalties.
Why is it very important to you that you be allowed to speak Spanish on the school grounds?
Well, that's our mother tongue, so I don't see why it should be taken away from us.
They risked it all. They walked out of that building. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. They had no ideas. They'd had enough.
So when the bell rings, I get up and I start walking out. I'm shaking like crazy. My mind just doesn't want to function.
I walked out because I believed in what they were doing. And the reason for the walkout was for us to speak our rights that we knew we didn't have.
The plan was to sprint, all right? And the ones with the signs, okay, we wanted them on the main highway, all right? Some of them here were chanting, we were doing that.
Different teachers would come and stand up front just so they could make sure they got everybody's name that was out there on the picket line.
What happened there at Edcouch-Elsa was that they identified all their leaders and arrested them all and took them to jail. The white power punished these kids who had walked out.
Finally, that the blatant discrimination against the Mexican-American students in this school stop immediately. We demand justice.
The practice here has been one of domination. But the Mexican Americans say that day has ended, that they are on the move, that they will have a piece of the action. This is the Rio Grande, which flows the length of the Rio Grande Valley. It is a lush valley of citrus groves, where Mexican Americans, attracted by the agriculture industry, outnumber the Anglo population. The practice here has been one of domination, but the Mexican Americans say that day has ended, that they are on the move, that they will have a piece of the action.
And I'm sitting in my desk, knowing what's coming, knowing good and well that I'm going to do it. I knew I was going to do it. But and you asked me if you were afraid of, I was shaking like crazy. I mean, as brave as I consider myself to be at the time, and the macho, I was scared, but I knew I was going to do it.
They risked it all. They walked out of that building. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. They had no ideas. They'd had enough. They just got to the point where they couldn't take it anymore. And it was time.
In my opinion, they have always been pushing us, and I think it's time for us not to be pushed around so much.
I was a person that I would stand up for myself, I would defend myself. I walked out because I believe in what we were standing for.
I mean, one of their demands was to be able to speak Spanish. And another one was classes in Mexican American history and culture.
Why is it very important to you that you be allowed to speak Spanish on the school grounds?
Well, that's our mother tongue, so I don't see why it should be taken away from us.
I talked to a friend of mine, and he'd go talk to somebody else, and before you knew it, everybody knew something was going to happen. Because you could see the tense in the school, and the teachers everybody was getting kind of nervous because they knew something was up. And they knew there were meetings being held after school in different places. It was pretty tense because we actually went to class first. And then there was a certain hour we said, this is when we're going to get up and we're going to leave. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking. We didn't know what was going to happen.
You would go into the classroom and we just automatically knew we had to sit in the back rows. I walked out because I believed in what they were doing. And the reason for the walkout was for us to speak our rights that we knew we didn't have.
And we could see in front of the high school, different teachers would come and stand up front just so they could make sure they got everybody's name that was out there on the picket line.
We were all advised, just walk. It might be on our favor and it might not be, but let's go for it.
So when the bell rings, I get up and I start walking out. I'm shaking like crazy. My mind just doesn't want to function. It's not functioning. All I knew was that I was supposed to see my mother out there because my dad had asked her to be here for me on that day. And the kids were asking me what to do and I couldn't respond to them. As soon as I saw my mother, then this peace, this whatever glow comes into me, my mind settles down, I stopped shaking, and then I was able to function. I was able to now instruct the kids, the rest of the kids that were walking out with us, what to do, where to go, and whatever like that. It was an amazing moment for me that I will never, ever in my life will forget how when you have someone that you trust so much can give you that kind of security when you're at that point where you're at a loss. And that's what my mother did for me that day. I don't know if you've ever been real afraid. I don't know. Well, that day I was. And I don't know that I can say that I've ever had that experience anymore. I really can't say. Yes, do I fear? At times, of course, we all fear stuff. And I believe in fear. God put it there for a reason. It's a warning signal to you and whatever. Right by that black pole over there is where the sheriff's department came and stopped, and that's where Javier and the rest got arrested. Right here. It all happened here. And Mr. Pipkin and whoever else they were standing here. And of course, they're identifying. Right away, and what I captured from that is right away, one identified to punish. Is what they were doing immediately. That's what they're doing. Instead of wondering why we're out here, okay, let's find out who it is so we can get them. That's not what life, to me, it's not what life is supposed to be about. Try to understand each other. There's reasons why we all do what we do. Ask. Ask. Nobody did. Nobody asked.
For the night before the walkout, my brother Ruben, he was very instrumental on me walking out. I remember he was talking about it at home. He was mentioning to my mom that there was going to be a walkout. And I asked if I could walk out. And he said, go for it. You have my permission. And he was like the father figure to us, And I knew that I was going to get it with my mom. I knew she was going to be against it, but I still did it. Ruben was, like I told you, he was encouraging, and he just said, and these were his words, he said, Carnal, I never expected you to walk out. He said, but I'm glad you did. And as a matter of fact, before he passed away, he gave me that binder with all the information, and he said, "You were the brave one from the family, and I want you to keep this." I had put him away because it was just, first of all, he gave him to me when he passed away, right before. But just seeing those letters, was just, it just brings sadness, and then I guess you're happy that some of them, whoever wrote them, were standing for us, for what we believed. But going through this, these articles, it just hurts because this is not who we were or who we are. That just makes me want to fight harder for our rights. I hadn't seen the binder. It stored away when my brother passed away. And this morning I started going through it, and it was just the whole idea, the whole thing of us as Hispanics standing up for what we believe. Even though in my case I knew that I hurt my mom a lot, and that's the least thing I wanted to do. I never thought that I would hurt her. I admire them now more than ever. Knowing more of what they went through, having to be transported to La Jolla, having to go to San Antonio to fight, to just be readmitted. I congratulate them. Because of them, we are who we are now.
The leaders of that place circulated a leaflet, an advertisement, if you will, of the new city of Elsa that said that Mexican colony, green tags, business lots, red tags, and then the other tags were the residence lots, like the white tags. When Elsa was founded in 1927, Elsa was founded as a segregated town. It was in the DNA of that community to separate people. Social institutions, economic institutions, educational institutions would then follow suit to this DNA of the founding of the town. So when the schools were founded, for example, you will see that there was a Mexican school. You will see that there was, the other schools. And so very clearly the schools were born as segregated places within the school district. This was Jim Crow in South Texas.
We thought that's the way it's supposed to be. Así debe ser. They have the rules. Manda. El que tiene power es el que manda. Y that's the way it is. No le pelees. Therefore, when my brother got involved in this movement del walkout, my mom was upset. ¿Quién le manda que se meta en eso? ¿Quién le manda? Que échenle a la cárcel, déjenlo ya, él le quiere hacer eso. Debe de obedecer las leyes y quien que sea. Que sí, they were like that. They didn't realize, again, they hadn't opened their eyes either, like we were. Nosotros todavía creíamos que el gobierno manda. The rule is the rule. They're in charge. They have the board, the school board. White people run the schools. That's the way it is. They have their streets over there all paved and clean and everything.
Well, Chicanos were on one side of town. People deny this, but the Chicanos live on one side of town and the white people lived on the other side of town. And that's how it was. So we all knew it. So the funny thing about this whole deal is, like me, I went to the elementary school that was right close to the high school. And it was us and the Anglo kids, or the white kids, and we got best of friends forever, all the way through 6th grade, junior high. Once we got up to the 9th grade, we just started seeing where we started separating ourselves for some reason. I don't know why. Because we had these friendships for the first 8 years of our schooling. And then get to freshman year and things kind of start going different directions.
Freshman year is when I started seeing things differently, and you know how actually we're treated compared to the rest of the population, which were the Anglo. And I always wondered why, to the point that I guess in my ignorance, I went home one afternoon. I was real down because I was seeing, and I wanted what the Anglos had. I wanted it, but in my stupidity, I thought that to be able to have it, you had to be Anglo. So I go home, I tell my mother, why did I have to be born Mexican? I wish I had been born an Anglo. Of course, I devastated my mother when I told her that. She cried that afternoon real bad. And then with time, of course, I realized the mistake that I made. And because I was literally telling her I didn't want to be part of her. It's the way I see it now. That's literally, I don't want to be a part of you and Dad. I want to be an Anglo so I can have. Those are the little things that today, and I think back and like right now, it hurts. The things that I did, and I didn't know any better. But that's part of life.
My mom always raised us with a lot of love and respect for everybody. That back then, like I told you, I didn't see that as discrimination. I just saw that was part of life. You know, we were Mexican Americans, they were Anglos. They were treated differently than we were. I did start seeing, you know, that we as Mexican Americans were treated differently than the Anglos. As far as, you know, you would go into the classroom and the Anglos were in the front. And we just automatically knew we had to sit in the back rows. Like I told you, we would go eat in the cafeteria and there was 2 different lines, one for the Mexican Americans and one for the Anglos.
Esa era una de que no podíamos hablar el español. Esa era una de las cosas principales que decidimos hacer esto. Que nomás ciertas personas tenían derecho a ciertas cosas y ciertas personas podían hacer esto y podían hacer lo otro. Y luego especialmente si eras migrant y venías, pues ya no había lugar, aunque fueran de las más smarts que hubiera, pero ya no había lugar porque perdieron el tiempo de cuando fueron de migrants. Pues I believed in a lot of things that we were asking there that we did not like, that only certain kids wouldn't be able to do something or wouldn't be able to be getting something.
The only way you were exempt from being drafted, that you go to college and you better be passing. Pero yes, there was a counselor in our school, and anybody you talk to from my class will tell you the same thing. A nosotros le decía, you guys go in the military. She wouldn't encourage anybody to go to college.
I remember very clearly that I wanted to go to college. And we would go, and we didn't know where to start. And she literally just said, you're not college material. I can't help you.
Había unos cuantos teachers like that. See, it was that kind of thing that gave birth to the resistance and to the protest of '68.
And then what happened, you know, leading up to November in 1968 is that the students began to, you know, in very bold ways, began to talk to the administration. So not only the high school, but also at central office about, you know, there's some things that are wrong that we'd like you to address. They were just asking for their basic rights as students. And they submitted the list of demands to the administration, and the administration did not respond favorably. And so all of this really came to a head where the students then said, look, if you will not respond to our demands, then we will take action. And so this was essentially, you know, the I think the context, and the set of conditions where then one day, on this fateful day of November 14, 1968, that they would all stand up and they would walk out of their classrooms.
Well, I had heard some rumblings going on around school about trying to correct some things that we didn't agree with in school. So we started talking to some other students, and then we met up with Lali Science. So we started having meetings. I think the first meeting we had was at my mom and dad's place. Quite a few of us got together, and that's where we kind of decided that how we were going to proceed to do what we wanted to do, and that's where I think that was the first time that we actually drafted a list of things we would like to change in school. So from there, it just started evolving. More people started getting interested in stuff. So
Mexican-American students at a school in the Valley community of Edcouch have been demonstrating for what they say are their rights.
Pero when the opportunity was there, I said, yeah, let's go for it. It might be on our favor and it might not be, but let's go for it.
It was pretty tense because we actually went to class first. And then there was a certain hour we said, this is when we're going to get up and we're going to leave. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking. We didn't know what was going to happen. Finally, everybody just started getting up about the same time. Everybody just started walking out.
We were all advised, just walk. Don't cuss, don't do nothing, just walk. We get out there and we keep on walking until see what happens. Eso sí me acuerdo que dijimos todos, we're not gonna be doing this, we're not gonna be doing that. We're just gonna go.
The plan was to spread, all right? To spread, and the ones with the signs, okay, we wanted them on the main highway, all right? Some of them here were chanting, we were doing that. But the main thing was how we were gonna do the walk with our posters and stuff, which is all in that section there.
I think later on that day, football team came out and kind of harassed us and stuff. So, and we could see in front of the high school, different teachers would come and stand up front just so they could make sure they got everybody's name that was out there on the picket line. That's how they got everybody's name. Just different teachers that were rotating. Or they'd go out there and walk in line and start jotting down the students that they knew, because there's no way they could know all the students. One teacher could know all the students, but.
As soon as I got to school, I saw the people out there, and I immediately I didn't even go into the classroom. I just walked out.
And I remember clearly, Freddie Science, actually Lupa Science brother, all right? He was right in the front. And then, of course, a bunch of kids were congregated over there. And it was just a lot of commotion going on all over the place. A lot of it.
At that time, I think I would just walk back and forth on the line to make sure that none of them was going to try to do something that we shouldn't do. Not that we were afraid of that happening, but to have a witness in case they were accused about something. Como te digo, we didn't even cuss back at a teacher.
You could see the commotion with the administration. They would just walk out and see who was out there. And I was an 8th grader at that time. And I could see all these upperclassmen, Javier, Eddie, Mirtala. And I said, that they're right what they're saying,
And when I turned the corner, that's when I started hunting. And then all of a sudden I see her. This is it. I laugh because I can't believe it, how I got. And once I saw my mother, the confidence I I can't believe it. I said, wow, you know. Right here. And she was standing kind of like that, arm crossed, just waiting. And then I see her. And she was to this side of it. I remember that. I'll never forget that. That was implanted in my mind for life.
Pero they did call the cops on us. And we weren't trying to throw anything at anybody's faces. To me, we were just trying to come up ahead. And it wasn't only for us, but for the future of the Edcouch-Elsa students.
So they got a judge to give them an arrest order for 5 of us. We're all terrified.
Because the county sheriffs were there, DPS were there, Texas Rangers were there. These are kids. Why do you need the Texas Rangers? Why do you need all of these? These are kids. But yet, they show a force, the white power force. What happened there at Edcouch-Elsa was that they identified all their leaders and all the ones that had done the actual trouble making the walkout and arrested them all and took them to jail, including my brother. They punished them. The white power punished these kids who had walked out.
So we got support in jail though. All the people in jail were clapping at us and stuff for standing up. So then at night we could see a whole bunch of candles looking outside the jail. There was a whole bunch of people on the outside perimeter with candles and stuff waiting for us to be pulled out. So there was more support than we thought, than I had dreamed of, that was going to, be around. But when we saw the amount of people that were out there, and there wasn't just people from Edcouch-Elsa, there was actually people from across the whole county that came to show support. So
the school district expelled about 175 of the students after they staged a walkout and began the demonstrations.
The one thing that they were allowed to do was to appear at a school board meeting. But the students who had walked out and were expelled and wanted to get back into school, they had to appear and make a public confession that what they had done in walking out was wrong. And a number of students did that.
November 20th, 68, in the Valley Morning Star newspaper. There's an article saying that they hear rebels, that Edcouch was going to have a school board meeting. They called us rebels. And that hurts because we weren't rebels. It just brings a lot of hurt feelings. The humiliation of just having to go and ask for forgiveness for something that we knew we had the right to stand for. It just hurts. The only one really encouraging me was Ruben, my brother. The other sisters kept telling me, you knew you were going to get in trouble. Look at you, you're being expelled. Look what mom is going through, because she had to literally go to the school board meeting and beg them. My family, to them it was, I guess, embarrassing. And I did feel embarrassed after, not embarrassed because of what I did, but embarrassed because I know what my mom was having to go through just to get me back to school. But will I walk out again? Most definitely.
We all had to come to the school board, and they were the ones that decided who got in, what criteria they used, heaven knows. But they were the ones that were deciding, you come in, you're out. When it came up to me going before them, of course, my mother and I, again, my father was working like always, and They built up my family like we were super people in this community, you know. And so I was thinking, wow, you know, they're going to let me back in, right? But of course, then the but came into play. But because of what happened, you're not accepted. I'm out.
Surprised me when we found out how many students actually walked out, because I didn't think it was going to be even close to what we had. I mean, a whole bunch ended up going back. There was a whole bunch that decided that their parents took them back to school. They kind of had to ask like for forgiveness or whatever, and then they let them back in, but a whole bunch of us still stayed out. So.
In some cases, it was because of the public shame that families felt. You know, people who were so committed to their kids and so committed to obeying the rules of the school, you know, humble Mexican-American parents feeling ashamed because, oh, my kid broke, you know, the rule or the law. You know, in some cases, parents in some cases became more emboldened by it. Oh, with my kid, maybe I wasn't in support, but now I'm in support of my kid.
There was a very limited community support. I don't think it was because they didn't believe what we did. They were just afraid of retaliation. You know, a lot of them worked on the Rotel canning company that was here in Elsa. And they knew that they were part of it, or they knew that they were supporting the walkout. They would probably be fired. So that kept a lot of the older people from supporting us. You know, they were afraid. I think that's the biggest thing, was fear of us, of retaliation.
My dad was a barber in Edcouch, and my mom was a housewife. She was a cosmetologist too, so she did hair at the house. They were really supportive. I think it was probably harder on them than it was on me, because they ended up losing friendships because of that. They were both kind of boycotted because of the walkout. A lot of people stayed away from, especially from my dad's barbershop. And then it took, I don't know, a couple of years before they started coming back to him. So financially, it was a real strain on them, but they never wavered in their support, so, which was awesome.
You know, Javier was clearly one of the leaders leading up to the walkout. And the principal of the elementary school, of Edcouch Elementary School, which was right across the street from the barber shop that Pablo Ramirez operated. It was his barbershop. Travis Massey, the principal of Edcouch Elementary, who would become my principal in 1970, 71, 72, was a customer of Pablo Ramirez's at the barbershop. Travis Massey came in for a haircut. And Travis Massey made it a point to say to Mr. Ramirez, "Paul, I understand your son, Javier, is one of these rabble-rousers. I would advise you, Paul, to tell your kid to settle down. You know, algo así." And Pablo Ramirez's comeback was something like, in an infuriated state, he said, "Mr. Massey, I'm going to support my son." And that Mr. Massey then very clearly said to him, "You know, you're going to lose my business, and you're going to lose a lot of other business," meaning, you know, white people's business at that barbershop. And Mr. Ramirez accepted that.
What really hurt me a lot was the next day when I read the paper, and immediately the first thing that the school does is right away the accusations that we're the scum of Edcouch-Elsa, we were the potential dropouts, we would never amount to anything, you know, we were the scum of the scum. And all because we walked out, all because we would not agree with how they were ruling here in this school.
We went to La Jolla. Can't remember how long we went to La Jolla. And then right after we started going to La Jolla is when the case went to the federal judge in Brownsville.
But there were other people like Bob Sanchez, who had been a World War II veteran and was a lawyer at the time. And Bob Sanchez is actually the one who represented the students in the federal courthouse. And so, there was a lot of movement. And also Maldiv came. Maldiv had been founded in 1968, in the summer of 68, through a Ford Foundation grant, interestingly. And Maldiv took on the Edcouch-Elsa High School walkout case as its very first education case.
And it's because of those walkout participants that things began to change. And really, look around. The person who drove that bus so that they could go to La Jolla after that gets on the school board. And there's little things like that happen all around. And there's a chain. All kinds of things change.
But I think that, as best as we've been able to piece it together, that there was a lot of anti, which really, I think, raised the stakes for the students who did this. In face of that resistance, they still did it. But there was something else that happened that was very, very interesting also, and that was economic divestment from the community. And the symbol of that was the Toyota dealership. Frank Smith Toyota took his dealership out of Elsa and moved it to McAllen. A bunch of other people left. A bunch of other people took their businesses and took the experience. Not only took capital, but also took the experience. Pero la raza se quedó. And la raza trying to make do. How do we do it now, right? But there was this brand, though, of activism, that was unleashed in the Delta area. And so now there were like a couple political parties now, and it was like, very, very like for la raza kind of thing. I think that the truth is that this was an authentic student movement that was precipitated by very personal and collective angst of the students, who felt this sense of injustice. It was not only injustice of the moment, but there was injustice that had been shaped by historical forces. After the walkout, people organized in political ways that had not happened before. But 1970, 71, Mexican-American majority on the school board. By 1974, all brown on the school board.
But then right after that is when the politics of the game, more Hispanics started running, and by 1970, the Hispanics had a majority in the school board. And that's when I really started seeing difference. In 73, 3 years later, I'm 21, something like that. I actually run for the school board and I get elected. So I served from 73 to 76, 3 years. And those years, they were all Hispanic. By the time I came in, all Hispanics. That's when A.W. Bell, actually he resigned after all the pressure. That's when A.B. Elizalde came into play. And then they brought in a bunch of the administration Hispanics. And then it really started changing,
First of all, my brother Ruben got very, very involved. And he was one of the first radical Hispanic school board member that got elected. I started noticing on, him and Mr. Mendez, Tommy Mendez, they were always fighting for our rights and less fear, more proud to be a Hispanic. You just started seeing more involvement of the Mexican Americans, in the school activities and the clubs. You could speak more Spanish without being afraid as to what they were going to do to you, what the consequences were going to be. Slowly, we started sitting a little bit closer to the professor, than way in the back. Due to the fact that I walked out, I was seen differently. I remember I was never treated the same. I was looked at as by some administrators and some teachers as a radical one, as a troublemaker. They knew that I was going to stand up for what I believed, and there was like a guard, you know. The teachers were a little bit more careful as to how they would treated me, and that's the little things that I started noticing that started changing. I was very happy that I did. I felt that finally we were going to be free, that we were going to have our speaking rights. We were going to be able to stand up for what we believed. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
Pay attention to the youth and listen to the youth. When the youth walked out, a lot of the community came together and supported them. But a lot of the community also looked at them as rebels, as troublemakers, why are they complaining, right? They're just being silly. Or they just did it to walk out of class. But the youth are very intelligent, and the youth often have their pulse on what is right and wrong with society. Look to them for guidance. Look for them as leaders, and not turn our backs on them.
It's like if you feel that this person is not your color, or this person does not speak the way you speak, don't treat them any less. You're the one that's missing something. That's why you want to slash out at somebody else. You're the one that's hurting, not the ones that you want to hurt. Talk to them so that you can get it out of your system. And so you can be able to communicate and relate things together. It feels good, though, that people remember. It feels nice that they want to know the difference of during that time to this time. Again, to me, it was just natural. I wasn't scared. I wasn't. The only thing that I can say is, again, thank you, Lord, for everything that we went through, and it helped other people. And I hope they can understand all that so that they can do the best of themselves too.
Young people can exercise a lot of power. That young people have a very important voice. Young people can create social change. In that community, there was an awakening, there was a reckoning, and it would not have happened if the adults had been left to provide the leadership. It would not have happened. It was kids, because they felt the inquietud in much more urgent ways.
How does it feel? Old, for one, knowing that I'm old now. Knowing that this is a school district that I totally love. Knowing and being grateful to God for allowing me to be a part that I played, and hoping that with what we did, it did make it better for some or others. And even if it's one, then we were successful. Besides that, and those are the things that I live with, right? Things that at moments like this come back, and I do have those happy moments, but then I have the sad moments too when I'm thinking of all that happened. And we were identified as a scum. Well, we proved them wrong. We were not the scum that they were talking about. And that's the big highlight for me now at this stage of my life, that we proved to them that they were wrong, totally wrong about us. I love the school district. I'm a Máquina Maria yellow jacket to the core. Win or lose, I don't care. I'm Máquina Maria to my death. That's how I feel. And that's why I'm going to be here until the day I die. I have my house. My father built the first part of it. The rest I've added to it and whatever, but that's home. That's home. That's it. And that's where I stand, and that's how I live today.
When I came back, el movimiento estaba caliente aquí. The Walkout 68 abrió los ojos para muchas otras cosas. Que ya estaba brewing. Ya nomás necesitaba un trigger to explode, and that, the Walkout of 68 was the trigger. They were not troublemakers. They were heroes. They had the guts to do what we, in 67, we didn't think about. Those kids had the guts to do that and take it upon themselves. We are going to have change. Change has got to happen at Edcouch-Elsa High School. It happened with the class of 68 because we had kids like that who were willing to take the risk. And today those kids, I don't consider them rebels and troublemakers. They were heroes. They need to be recognized as heroes.
We needed to honor the students that walked out and needed to honor them in a very public way, and to do so in Edcouch-Elsa ISD. And it was time for them to know there were many, many people out there that thought that what they did was extremely courageous, and what they were fighting for was the dignity of their community. The Center for Mexican American Studies, along with the South Texas Conjunto Association and NETA, all had this idea that this was a very important moment in history that needed to be remembered and commemorated.
I also did this because I was the oldest of a 6 student family, and I wanted to set a good example for the rest of my brothers and sisters who went on.
Too many things, a lot of hurt, a lot of wounds, but it was those wounds that inspired me to pursue an education and give and offer to my students what I was not able to achieve.
Pero me da mucho gusto que ahora de tantos años recuerden y sepan lo que nosotros tratamos de hacer, y vemos que sí salimos adelante, ayudando, no que tanto por nosotros, sino por los que seguían, las otras generaciones. Y aunque uno no vaya a estar aquí en unos 10, 5 o lo que sea, si quieren recordarnos, sigan haciendo lo que están haciendo ahorita. Y no se dejen caer por ustedes mismos, que porque les digan que son mexicanos, que no sirven, lo que esto y que el otro, no. Nosotros hacemos lo que nosotros hacemos y como nosotros vamos a hacer. Que no los pongan para abajo. Si ustedes se creen, si ustedes han batallado y han sufrido, no. Lo que fueron nuestros padres. Y nosotros, gracias a Dios, que nos hemos levantado. Así que muchas gracias y adelante vamos todos.
After the commemoration in the evening, we held a community plática at the Llano Grande Center. You know, as a community, we share stories. It's in a form of a plática, you know, over a meal, over coffee or pan. And so I think that's what also made everyone a lot more comfortable.
When we got out, when all the students came out the first day, they were encouraging the other students to walk out. And every time one would come out, like when she came out, we would all go, yay! Yes. And we would make so much noise, remember? And so then the others wanted to come out too. But there were several areas where they were coming out from. And one, I don't remember how many areas they were coming out. But each area had a welcoming committee outside. Yes. So we would make a lot of noise, and everybody was very happy that day, and they were just coming out. on both sides of the building. We were just very happy.
They would be able to talk amongst themselves, and the community would be there to observe, but also ask questions and give them the space that they needed, because many of them hadn't seen each other in many, many years, and also process what had happened in the morning. A lot of wounds were healed for many of those students that walked out. Of course, we wish all of the participants could have been there.
And remember, the most important thing to me about all these kids that did that, they were kids, but they were willing to stand up for what they believed. That's the beauty at the end of the day, to me. That's the beauty. They stood up and they made their voice be heard.
The walkout participants should be remembered as heroes. The walkout participants should be seen as people who really, although from their stories, they were scared, but really were fearless. And because of them, people took notice. People decided, you know what? They're not going to take it anymore. And the students didn't. And because of them, more people said, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to be pushed around. Why is this happening? Let's look around. What's going on around here? We can do something. We can make a change in our communities. And so those students are heroes, and they should be remembered as heroes.
I mean, for a 17-year-old, I mean, who gets to do stuff like that? Not very many. I was lucky. Mm-hmm. I consider myself lucky. So mm-hmm. It was quite the adventure, quite the trip. Mm-hmm. It's good that it's made that kind of impact. I mean, it's hard to believe it's been 50 years ago. It really is. I mean, it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime. So hopefully you guys keep carrying the torch. Mm-hmm. We put a little spark in there, now you guys need to get the fire going. And that's the only way we want to change it. So. Yeah. We try to do that at Pan Am too. We used to have an organization called MECHA, and it's Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. That's what it stood for. And I was the president at Pan Am. And we tried to get Chicano studies there. And I don't know if they have them yet or not.
And so we went in 2009 from teaching one section of Intro to Mexican American Studies, where today we're probably teaching upwards of 25, 30 sections a year of that class. So where previously maybe 60 students, in 2009 we're learning about the Edcouch-Elsa Walkouts, we're talking about now you're looking at, thousands of students every year learning about the Edcouch-Elsa Walkouts. It's a lot easier to find the courage to stand up for social justice when there's a precedence in your community. So if kids learn, right, that the Edcouch-Elsa Walkout exists and that their community stood up, right, in those times. And like my students would be like, oh my God, and imagine it was how bad it was then, right? If they found the courage, I can find the courage.
Yeah, I think it's made a difference. More kids getting educated, more kids going to college, more kids trying to find better careers, more people willing to stand up and defend themselves, not put up with the crap. I think that made it one of the bigger impacts. Was that, hey man, why these kids can do it, why can't we as adults, So yeah, I think to that extent it made quite a difference. It took a long time to see the change, but it's there. So I don't know, Mom and Dad always were really proud. They always let me know how proud they were. not to be ashamed of it, and not to let anybody tell you to ever be ashamed for what you did, because it wasn't bad, it was a good thing. So it was awesome, especially coming from your mom and dad. So.
I'm happy I did it. I'm proud of myself that I did it. It's very emotional. Can't believe it's going to be 50 years. And I thank God that I'm still here. I'm still here talking about it, passing it on to my grandkids. Not to fear. We made history. It helped a lot of us, and it's still continuing to help a lot of Hispanics. And I'm very proud. The people that walked out, the people that supported us. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And once again, I'm glad I did it.
My feelings. I really can't say anything except that we did it because we believed. We did it because we believed. And never did it for any other reason. Everybody can say the future. Everybody can talk about the impacts. I know one thing, I was not looking for that. That wasn't even crossing my mind. All I knew was in those buildings there was injustice, and we wanted to correct it. That's it. That's it. That's why we were walking up and down, trying to make it better for us. And everybody else that stayed in there didn't walk out. But know this also, a lot of kids that didn't walk out, it wasn't because they didn't believe. Some because their parents told them they couldn't. Others because they were too afraid and didn't have that, whatever it is that makes you go forward. Whatever it is. If you ask me what it is that made me, I don't know. I just knew I was going to. What was built in there, what created that, I don't know. But we had a lot of them in there that believed. How do you put any measure into that? How do you do it? Can't. It is what it is. It was, at the time, what it was. I can't say very much above and beyond that. Can't.